The stars shimmered like scattered diamonds against the endless void, casting an ethereal glow over the desolate battlefield. The air was thick with the acrid scent of scorched earth and ionized plasma, remnants of a war that had raged for what felt like eternity. Captain Marcus Vale stood amidst the chaos, his armor battered but still intact, streaked with grime and blood, not all of it his own. He clutched his rifle tightly, its barrel smoking faintly from the last skirmish. Around him, the silence was deafening now, broken only by the distant hum of alien machinery and the occasional groan of dying soldiers. Marcus surveyed the wreckage before him, a once thriving outpost reduced to rubble. The mission had been clear: secure the perimeter, gather intelligence on enemy movements, and hold the line until reinforcements arrived. But as always in this interstellar conflict, plans crumbled faster than they were made. His squad had dwindled to just 3 others, their faces pale beneath helmets cracked and smeared with soot. They exchanged weary glances, each one too exhausted to speak, let alone voice their doubts about surviving another hour. Above them loomed the massive silhouette of an alien dreadnought, its sleek obsidian surface reflecting the light of a dying sun. It hung ominously in orbit, silent yet menacing, as though waiting for something, or someone. Marcus knew better than to underestimate these creatures. They were not bound by human logic or morality. Their motives remained shrouded in mystery, even after years of relentless warfare. All he understood was that their technology far surpassed humanity's, their strategies unpredictable, their resolve unyielding. He sighed heavily, lowering his weapon slightly as he scanned the horizon. The battlefield stretched endlessly, littered with debris and bodies, some human, some alien. Each corpse told a story of sacrifice, fear, and desperation. Yet amidst the carnage, there was also beauty. Strange luminescent flora sprouted defiantly through cracks in the terrain, glowing softly despite the destruction around them. It was as if nature itself refused to surrender entirely, clinging stubbornly to life. A sudden movement caught Marcus's eye, a flicker near the edge of the ruined command center. His grip tightened reflexively on the rifle as adrenaline surged through his veins. Was it another ambush? Or perhaps one of his men injured and crawling toward safety? He signaled silently to his remaining comrades, motioning for cover while he advanced cautiously toward the source of the disturbance. As he approached, the figure emerged from the shadows, stepping into the dim starlight. Time seemed to freeze as Marcus took in the sight before him. She was unlike anything he'd ever seen, a being both terrifying and breathtaking. Her skin shimmered with an iridescent sheen, shifting colors like liquid metal under the light. Long, flowing tendrils cascaded down her back, resembling hair but moving independently, almost alive. Her eyes glowed with an otherworldly intensity, pools of swirling galaxies that seemed to pierce straight through him. She wore no armor, no uniform, only garments woven from materials that looked impossibly delicate yet radiated strength. And then she spoke, her voice resonating deep within his chest, bypassing language barriers altogether. "Guess what, human?" she said, her tone laced with an emotion Marcus couldn't quite place. Amusement? Defiance? Something else entirely? "I am carrying your child." The words hit him like a bolt of lightning, jolting every nerve in his body. For a moment, Marcus forgot how to breathe. The weight of her declaration pressed down on him, heavier than any battle fatigue or physical wound he'd endured. His mind raced, grasping at fragments of memory, searching for answers that didn't exist. How could this be possible? When had such a thing occurred? And why would she choose to reveal this now, in the midst of chaos and despair? Her gaze never wavered, locked onto him with an intensity that demanded acknowledgement. Slowly, Marcus lowered his weapon, though his fingers remained curled tightly around it. What are you talking about?" he managed to choke out, his voice hoarse and uncertain. The question sounded absurd even to his own ears, but it was all he could muster in the face of her impossible claim. She tilted her head slightly, studying him as though assessing whether he truly comprehended the gravity of her words. Then, without warning, she stepped closer, closing the distance between them with fluid grace. Her presence was overwhelming, an intoxicating blend of power and fragility that left him disoriented. "You doubt me," she murmured, her voice softer now but no less commanding. "Yet you cannot deny what lies within me." Before he could respond, she extended a slender hand, placing it gently over her abdomen. A faint pulse of energy emanated from her touch, rippling outward like a heartbeat. Marcus stared, transfixed, as the glow intensified, illuminating the space between them. It wasn't merely light, it carried warmth, life, something profoundly alive. His chest tightened, torn between disbelief and awe. "This is real," she continued, her tone unwavering. "Your seed has taken root within me, human. Do you not feel it? This bond we share transcends your understanding of biology, of time, of destiny." Destiny. The word echoed in his mind, unsettling and foreign. Marcus had always believed in choices, actions, consequences, things tangible and grounded in reality. Destiny belonged to poets and dreamers, not soldiers hardened by war. Yet here she stood, unraveling everything he thought he knew with a single revelation. "Why?" he finally whispered, his voice barely audible above the distant hum of the dreadnought overhead. "Why tell me this now?" Her expression shifted subtly, a flicker of vulnerability breaking through her otherwise composed demeanor. "Because I have chosen you," she replied simply, as though it explained everything. "And because time grows short." Short for what? Marcus wanted to demand, but the words lodged in his throat. Instead, he glanced back at his team, who were watching the exchange with wide-eyed confusion. They hadn't heard her words, but they could sense the tension crackling in the air. One of them, Corporal Hayes, started forward hesitantly, raising his weapon half-heartedly before thinking better of it. "You need to come with us," Marcus said abruptly, turning back to her. His voice was firmer now, edged with authority born of desperation. "If what you say is true, then—" he trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. What did one do when confronted with the impossible? Protect it, destroy it, run. But she only smiled, a small enigmatic curve of her lips that sent a shiver down his spine. "No, human," she said softly. "It is you who must come with me." With those words, she turned away, her luminous form blending seamlessly with the fading starlight. Panic surged through Marcus, rooting him to the spot. "Wait!" he called out, taking a step forward. "Where are you going? You can't just—" Her laughter cut him off, melodic yet tinged with sorrow. "Oh, but I can," she said, glancing over her shoulder. "And you will follow. You have no choice." Then, as suddenly as she had appeared, she vanished into the shadows, leaving behind only the faintest trace of her presence, a lingering warmth on his skin and the echo of her voice in his mind. Marcus stood frozen, grappling with emotions he couldn't name. Fear, anger, wonder, they swirled together in a maelstrom that left him dizzy and unmoored. "What the hell was that?" Corporal Hayes asked, breaking the silence. His voice trembled slightly, betraying the unease they all felt. "I don't know," Marcus admitted quietly, though the lie tasted bitter on his tongue. He did know, at least part of him did. Deep down, buried beneath layers of skepticism and logic, he knew she wasn't lying. Somehow, impossibly, she carried a piece of him inside her. And whatever fate awaited them, it was tied irrevocably to the child growing within her. As Marcus stood rooted to the spot, his mind reeled with questions that clawed at the edges of his sanity. Who was she? What was she? The term alien felt woefully inadequate to describe the being who had just appended his reality. She wasn't merely different, she was otherworldly, a manifestation of forces beyond human comprehension. Every fiber of his training screamed caution, yet something deeper, an instinct he couldn't suppress, drew him inexorably toward her. He thought back to the countless battles he'd fought against her kind, the skirmishes where humanity had struggled against superior technology and tactics. Never once had he considered the possibility of connection, of intimacy, let alone creation. The idea was preposterous, a violation of every natural law he'd ever known. Yet here he was, staring into the abyss of uncertainty, unable to dismiss her claim outright. "You're insane if you believe her," Corporal Hayes muttered, snapping Marcus out of his reverie. The younger soldier's face was pale, his hands trembling as he adjusted his grip on his rifle. "This has to be some kind of trick. Alien psyops or something. We can't trust her." Marcus wanted to agree, to write her off as an enemy combatant using psychological warfare to destabilize their ranks. But the look in her eyes, the raw honesty mingled with defiance, haunted him. She hadn't spoken with malice or manipulation. There had been no ulterior motive in her voice, only conviction. And that terrified him more than any weapon she might wield. "She's not lying," Marcus said finally, his voice low but resolute. The words felt heavy, like stones sinking into a riverbed. He turned to face his team, meeting their incredulous stares head-on. "I don't know how or why, but she's telling the truth." Hayes scoffed, shaking his head in disbelief. "Captain, you're losing it. This isn't some fairy tale. She's the enemy." "And maybe she's more than that," Marcus shot back, his tone sharper than intended. He ran a hand over his face, trying to steady himself. "Look, I don't have all the answers. Hell, I barely understand what just happened. But we can't ignore this. If what she says is true, if she's carrying my child, then we're dealing with something bigger than any of us realized." The silence that followed was oppressive, broken only by the faint hum of distant machinery. Sergeant Rivera, the oldest member of the squad, stepped forward, his weathered features etched with concern. "Sir, with respect, this changes nothing. We're soldiers. Our job is to survive, regroup, and complete the mission. Whatever personal drama you've got going on with her doesn't change the fact that we're surrounded by hostiles." Rivera's words struck a chord, grounding Marcus momentarily. He knew the sergeant was right, they were still in enemy territory, outnumbered and outgunned. But the weight of the princess's revelation lingered, refusing to be dismissed. How could he focus on survival when the future of two species might hinge on his next move? "I get that," Marcus replied, his voice strained. "Believe me, I do. But we can't pretend this doesn't matter. If she's telling the truth, and I think she is, then this could shift the entire balance of the war. Maybe even end it." "How?" Hayes demanded, throwing up his hands in frustration. "By making babies with aliens? That's your plan?" "No," Marcus snapped, his patience wearing thin. "But if there's a chance, a real chance, that this could bring peace, then we owe it to ourselves, to humanity, to find out. Think about it. Why would she risk coming here, revealing herself like this, unless she believed it mattered?" The argument hung in the air, unresolved, as the group exchanged uneasy glances. None of them had an answer, and Marcus knew he was asking too much of them. Trusting an alien, especially one claiming to carry a hybrid child, was a leap most soldiers wouldn't take. Yet Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that she had offered him a lifeline, however fragile and fraught with danger. "We'll decide what to do next," Marcus said firmly, cutting off further debate. "For now, we stay alert and keep moving. But make no mistake, we're not leaving her behind." Hayes opened his mouth to protest, but Rivera silenced him with a sharp glance. The sergeant nodded reluctantly, though his expression remained skeptical. "Understood, sir. But if this goes sideways, we're counting on you to fix it." Marcus nodded grimly, knowing full well the burden of responsibility resting on his shoulders. As the team regrouped and prepared to move out, he found himself glancing repeatedly toward the shadows where she had disappeared. She hadn't given him a choice, and yet the decision ahead felt achingly personal. Follow her into the unknown, risking everything, or turn away and cling to the remnants of his old life. The internal conflict raged within him, twisting his thoughts into knots. On one side was duty, the oath he'd sworn to protect humanity, to fight for survival against overwhelming odds. On the other was something primal, something he couldn't articulate but felt in the marrow of his bones. A pull toward her, toward the life she carried, toward a future that defied logic and reason. As they moved cautiously through the ruins, Marcus's mind kept returning to her words, "You have no choice." Perhaps she was right. Perhaps fate, or whatever force governed the universe, had already decided his path. All he could do was walk it, step by agonizing step, and hope he wouldn't lose himself along the way. The alien princess's cryptic warning about time running short gnawed at Marcus like a persistent shadow. Each passing second felt heavier, laden with implications he couldn't fully grasp. The urgency in her voice suggested that whatever lay ahead wasn't merely a personal reckoning but a pivotal moment that could alter the course of both their worlds. Yet her refusal to elaborate left him adrift, navigating blind through a labyrinth of possibilities. As the squad trudged through the desolation, Marcus's thoughts spiraled into darker territory. What if her pregnancy was a weapon, a biological time bomb designed to infiltrate and destroy humanity from within? The notion seemed far-fetched, yet the paranoia embedded in years of warfare made it impossible to dismiss outright. Every step forward felt like walking into a trap, each breath a gamble against unseen forces conspiring against them. But then there was the alternative, a future where their union symbolized unity rather than annihilation. Could it be possible that their child represented a bridge between two warring species, a beacon of hope in a galaxy drowning in hatred and mistrust? The idea was intoxicating, almost painfully optimistic, yet it sparked a flicker of defiance within him. War had stripped away so much, lives, homes, innocence, but perhaps it hadn't extinguished the potential for something greater. Something worth fighting for. The dichotomy tore at him, pulling him in opposite directions. On one hand, he envisioned a world fractured further by fear and betrayal, where her revelation ignited xenophobic hysteria among humans and sealed their doom. On the other, he saw glimpses of a fragile peace, forged not through treaties or ceasefires but through the shared miracle of life. The stakes were unimaginable, the risks astronomical. And yet, the allure of redemption, a chance to rewrite the narrative of endless conflict, was irresistible. His companions noticed the turmoil etched across his face, though none dared to voice it. Hayes kept glancing back nervously, his jaw clenched tight, while Rivera maintained a stoic silence, his rifle perpetually trained on the horizon. Even Private Chen, the youngest and quietest of the group, seemed unusually tense, her usually bright eyes clouded with apprehension. They moved as a unit, bound by camaraderie and duty, but Marcus felt increasingly isolated, burdened by secrets they couldn't share. Every rustle of wind, every distant hum of alien machinery, heightened his awareness of the ticking clock. Time was slipping away, grain by grain, and with it, the opportunity to act. He replayed her final words in his mind. "You will follow. You have no choice." Was she orchestrating events beyond his comprehension, guiding him toward a predetermined outcome? Or was she as uncertain as he was, driven by instincts she couldn't control? The questions swirled endlessly, each one spawning new doubts and fears. What kind of parent could he possibly be to a child conceived under such extraordinary circumstances? How could he protect it, or her, from enemies on both sides, who would see its existence as either a threat or an abomination? And what of the mother herself? Her beauty and grace masked complexities he barely understood, let alone trusted. Could he reconcile the warrior within him with the role of protector she seemed to demand? Despite the chaos consuming his thoughts, Marcus found himself drawn to moments of clarity, fleeting as they were. In those rare instances, he allowed himself to imagine a different path, one where humanity and her people coexisted, learning from each other instead of destroying. He pictured a child laughing, free from the scars of war, embodying the best of both worlds. It was a fragile vision, easily shattered by reality, but it gave him purpose, a reason to push forward despite the odds. Yet even as hope flickered, the specter of loss loomed large. Failure wasn't an option, not when so much rested on his shoulders. If he faltered, if he misjudged her intentions or underestimated the dangers ahead, the consequences would ripple outward, affecting billions. The weight of that responsibility threatened to crush him, but he bore it nonetheless, clinging to the belief that somehow, some way, he could rise to the occasion. Each step brought him closer to the inevitable confrontation, the moment when he would have to choose between the woman who claimed to carry his child and the duty that defined him. Neither path promised salvation, only sacrifice. And as the ruins stretched endlessly before them, Marcus realized that the hardest battles were often fought not on the field of war but within the heart. The alien princess materialized before him again as if summoned by his turbulent thoughts, emerging from the shadows with an ethereal glow that seemed to defy the darkness surrounding them. Her presence was both soothing and unsettling, a paradox that mirrored the storm raging within Marcus. This time, she did not speak immediately, allowing the silence to stretch taut between them like a bowstring ready to snap. Instead, she simply stood there, her luminous form pulsating faintly, as though attuned to the rhythm of the universe itself. Marcus swallowed hard, his throat dry despite the cool night air. He wanted to ask her 1,000 questions, to demand answers that might bring clarity to the chaos engulfing him. But the words caught in his throat, tangled in a web of fear and awe. Finally, it was she who broke the silence, her voice resonating with a timbre that bypassed language entirely, embedding itself directly into his soul. "You carry guilt," she said softly, her gaze piercing through him as though she could see every secret he'd ever buried. "It weighs on you, this burden of responsibility. You believe yourself unworthy of what I offer, yet you cannot turn away." Her words struck a nerve, exposing vulnerabilities he had long kept hidden even from himself. How could she know? Had she read his mind, plucked the truth from the depths of his subconscious? Or was it simply that she understood him in ways no human ever could? "I don't know what you want from me," Marcus admitted, his voice rough with emotion. "I don't even know if I can trust you." Her expression softened, though her eyes remained intense, unreadable. "Trust is irrelevant," she replied. "What matters is necessity. You are needed, human. By me, by our child, by the cosmos itself." "Necessity," Marcus echoed, the word tasting bitter on his tongue. "How am I supposed to save anyone when I can barely keep myself alive?" She stepped closer, closing the distance between them until her radiant form filled his vision. Her proximity was intoxicating, overwhelming, and Marcus found himself struggling to maintain his composure. "You misunderstand," she murmured, her voice dropping to a whisper that sent shivers down his spine. "This is not about saving lives. It is about creating life. About forging a new path where none existed before." Her hand rose slowly, hovering inches from his cheek before lightly brushing against it. The touch was electric, sending waves of warmth coursing through him. For a brief moment, all his doubts dissolved, replaced by a profound sense of connection, as though they were two halves of a whole destined to meet. "But why me?" Marcus asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Out of everyone, why did you choose me?" Her smile was enigmatic, tinged with sadness. "Because you are strong," she said simply. "Because you endure. Because within you lies the spark of resilience that will ignite change." The sincerity in her words disarmed him, stripping away the walls he had built around himself. He wanted to believe her, to embrace the destiny she painted with such vivid strokes. But the rational part of his mind screamed caution, reminding him of the countless times trust had led to betrayal in the past. "And what happens if I fail?" he asked, his voice cracking under the weight of the question. "What happens to us?" Her gaze faltered for the first time, a flicker of uncertainty crossing her features. "Failure is not an option," she said firmly, though her tone betrayed a hint of vulnerability. "If we falter, the consequences will be catastrophic. Not just for us, but for everything." Marcus felt the enormity of her statement settle over him like a leaden cloak. The stakes were higher than he had imagined, stretching far beyond his comprehension. Yet amidst the fear and uncertainty, a strange sense of resolve began to take root. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he realized, he could not face them alone. Whether ally or adversary, she was bound to him now, intertwined in ways neither of them fully understood. As if sensing his shift in perspective, she reached out again, this time taking his hand in hers. Her grip was firm yet gentle, a paradox that mirrored her very essence. "Together," she said, her voice imbued with quiet determination, "we will navigate the storms ahead. But you must trust in yourself, human. Trust in the power of creation we share." Her words lingered in the air, weaving a tapestry of promise and peril. Marcus knew then that there was no turning back, no retreat into the familiar comforts of doubt and denial. Whatever road lay before them, they would walk it side by side, bound by a bond stronger than any weapon or shield. Behind them, the squad watched in uneasy silence, their weapons raised half-heartedly as though unsure whether to intervene. Marcus turned briefly to acknowledge them, offering a nod of reassurance that did little to ease their apprehension. Then, without another word, he turned back to the princess, gripping her hand tightly. "Lead the way," he said, his voice steady despite the turmoil within. "Show me where we go from here." She smiled, a genuine expression of gratitude that lit up her entire being. With a graceful motion, she gestured for him to follow, her luminous form guiding them deeper into the unknown. As they stepped forward, Marcus felt the first stirrings of hope, a fragile, flickering flame that promised to burn brightly if nurtured carefully. Together, they moved into the shadows, leaving behind the wreckage of war and stepping into a future written in stars. The journey that followed was unlike anything Marcus had ever experienced. The alien princess led him through landscapes that defied logic. Forests where the trees glowed with bioluminescent hues, rivers that flowed upward into the sky, and mountains that pulsed faintly as though alive. Each step felt like venturing further into a dream, yet the weight of reality pressed down on him with every breath. His companions trailed behind cautiously, their weapons at the ready but their expressions etched with awe and unease. They said little, their usual banter replaced by hushed whispers and wary glances. As they walked, the princess began to share fragments of her story, not in words, but through images and sensations that flooded Marcus's mind. He saw glimpses of her homeworld, a realm of breathtaking beauty marred by devastation wrought by war. He felt her sorrow for the lives lost, her anger at the endless cycle of violence, and her desperate hope that their union might break the chains binding both their species. It was overwhelming, intimate, and profoundly humbling. For the first time, Marcus understood why she had chosen him, not because he was special, but because he represented resilience, the unyielding human spirit that refused to yield even when faced with insurmountable odds. Yet understanding did not erase doubt. With each revelation came new questions, each answer birthing fresh uncertainties. What role would their child play in this fragile tapestry of peace? Would it be seen as a savior or a harbinger of doom? And what price would they have to pay to ensure its survival? Their path eventually brought them to a massive crystalline structure rising from the earth like a shard of starlight frozen in time. Its surface shimmered with shifting colors, reflecting the emotions of those who approached it. The princess paused before the entrance, turning to face Marcus with an expression that blended determination and vulnerability. "This is where we must part," she said softly, her voice tinged with regret. "Inside lies the heart of my people's power, a nexus of energy that sustains our existence. It is also the key to protecting our child." Marcus frowned, his grip tightening on his rifle. Protecting it from what? Her gaze flickered toward the horizon, where dark clouds were gathering unnaturally fast. "From those who seek to destroy us. My kind. They will not accept this union willingly. To them, your presence here is an affront, a corruption of all we hold sacred." "And mine?" Marcus asked grimly. "What about humanity? Do you think they'll welcome you with open arms?" She sighed, her luminous form dimming slightly as though burdened by the weight of his question. "No," she admitted. "But perhaps our child can bridge the divide. Perhaps it can teach them what we cannot, that survival depends not on conquest, but coexistence." Before Marcus could respond, the ground trembled beneath their feet. From the distance came the unmistakable roar of engines and the sharp crackle of energy weapons. Reinforcements had arrived, not just human, but alien as well. The air crackled with tension as ships descended from the sky, casting long shadows over the land. Marcus recognized the insignia on one of the vessels. It belonged to the United Earth Coalition, the military force tasked with defending humanity against extraterrestrial threats. Behind them loomed the sleek, menacing forms of alien cruisers, their weapons trained ominously on the group below. "Time runs shorter than I thought," the princess whispered, her voice urgent now. "You must decide, human. Will you stand with me, or will you let fear dictate your actions?" Marcus hesitated, torn between duty and destiny. His team exchanged uneasy glances, unsure whether to follow orders or trust their captain's judgment. Hayes stepped forward, his weapon aimed squarely at the princess. "Sir, we can't do this. She's playing you. If we don't act now, it's over for all of us." "No," Marcus snapped, stepping protectively in front of her. "If we kill her, if we destroy this chance, then everything we've fought for has been for nothing." Rivera lowered his rifle slightly, his weathered face creased with concern. "Captain, you're asking us to make a choice that could get us all killed. Are you sure about this?" "I'm not asking," Marcus replied firmly. "I'm telling you. We stay with her. Whatever happens next, we face it together." For a moment, silence reigned. Then, slowly, Rivera nodded, followed by Chan and Hayes, though the latter still looked unconvinced. The princess watched the exchange with quiet gratitude, her glowing form steadying as though drawing strength from their resolve. As the opposing forces closed in, Marcus turned back to her. "Tell me what to do," he said, his voice steady despite the chaos erupting around them. "How do we stop this?" She placed a hand on his chest, her touch radiating warmth and calm. "You must enter the Nexus," she explained. "It will amplify your essence, allowing you to shield our child, and ourselves, from harm. But beware, the process is dangerous. You may lose yourself in the energy." "I'll do it," Marcus said without hesitation. "Whatever it takes." Her smile was bittersweet, filled with pride and sorrow. "Then go, human. Trust in the bond we share. It will guide you." With that, she pushed him gently toward the crystalline structure, her form beginning to fade as though preparing to channel her own energy into the coming battle. Marcus took a deep breath and stepped inside, the world outside vanishing instantly as the walls of the Nexus enveloped him in a kaleidoscope of light and sound. Inside, he found himself standing at the center of a vast, pulsating core of energy. It hummed with life, resonating with the rhythm of his heartbeat. Memories flooded his mind, his childhood dreams of becoming a soldier, the sacrifices he'd made, the faces of comrades lost in battle. And then, clearer than anything else, he saw visions of the future, a world where humans and aliens lived side by side, learning from each other, building something greater than themselves. At the heart of it all stood a child, his child, smiling up at him with eyes that mirrored the stars. Tears blurred his vision as he reached out, letting the energy flow through him. Pain seared his body, but he embraced it, knowing it was the cost of creating a better tomorrow. Outside, the battle raged on, but within the Nexus, Marcus found peace. He became a conduit for hope, channeling the combined strength of two species into a single, unified force. When he emerged, the landscape had changed. The opposing armies had ceased fire, their weapons lowered as they stared in awe at the radiant figure standing beside the princess. Marcus felt different, lighter somehow, as though he carried not just his own burdens but the collective aspirations of humanity and her people. The princess approached him, her form brighter than ever. "You've done it," she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. "Together, we've taken the first step." But as she reached for him, a shadow passed over her face. Marcus followed her gaze to the horizon, where a new threat loomed, one far darker and more ancient than either of them had anticipated. Their journey was far from over, but for the first time, Marcus felt ready to face whatever lay ahead. Hand in hand, they stepped forward into the unknown, united not just by love, but by the unshakable belief that even in the darkest times, light could prevail.